Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. And AM 630. WMAL.
636 on WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. And coming here to talk today truly is Washington. At 8:35, Senator Rand Paul, Washington. At 8:05, Representative Steve King, Washington. At 7:35, Stuart Varney, New York. And joining us now is Lanny Davis. I'm Larry O'Connor with Brian Wilson.
Hey, Lanny, listen, I want to start out by asking you a question. Yesterday I saw Jay Carney at the White House, and he's talking about the fact that the economy has contracted by 1.1%, and that's sort of a significant thing. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a big deal in economic circles. And the first thing, the reaction from the White House was, this is the Republicans' fault. Is that the way it's going to be going forward? Is it just every single thing that comes out of the White House, they can't take responsible for any part of the economy?
Well, I don't think it's correct, and I also don't think it's politically wise. I think Jay may have intended to say that some of it is the result of the Republicans not being part of the grand bargain, which may be what's causing the economy to stutter. But really don't know. This is just a very minor hiccup. It looks like it was a minus 0.1%. It could be adjusted next month.
So, are you saying you think Jay Carney was misunderstood? Because I want you to hear what he said. Here's the cut.
Let me listen.
Home prices are starting to climb back. Consumer confidence overall has been rising, and consumer spending has been rising. But there's more work to do, and our economy is facing a major headwind, which goes to your point, and that's Republicans in Congress.
There you go.
You know, that's really not the Jay Carney that I know very well. That's a pretty partisan statement, and that's not Jay. And I think that in a second term, the White House is going to learn to speak in more bipartisan terms and work with people rather than blame people. But the fact is that you do have a faction in the House Republicans who don't want to come to the table for a grand bargain. And I think the immigration reform effort in the Senate is the first time I've really seen bipartisanship for at least 4 or 5 years in the Congress. And maybe the Senate now has to set the stage and not, in this sense, Jay's blaming the House. But I just don't like the comment. I have to disagree with this.
Well, and Lanny, I know that you always talk about bipartisanship. You saw the immigration press conference that the senators came out with. You had the Gang of 8, 4 and 4 on each side. And isn't this a time where the president and the White House should be embracing that bipartisanship? Instead, you heard him. It was a pretty partisan campaign rally-style speech that he gave the next day in Nevada, and basically calling out Congress and challenging Congress. Was that the right tone for the president to strike if he really does want a bipartisan approach?
Isn't that the only tone they have?
Well, I would have liked, I think he is trying to keep the pressure on. So as a president, keeping the pressure on, I can accept that. But I also think what he missed was an opportunity to use the senators. And you did have a pretty, I thought that Marco Rubio and Bill Nelson, Democrat and Republican from Florida, taking the floor of the Senate to do something together. I'd like to see President Obama reinforce that positive development, even if it means isolating some of the more partisan people in the House. But
yeah.
I do think he's got to find a balance. Yesterday would have been a great time to embrace and support what the senators did. And I think he did say some good words about them, but I'd like to see more emphasis on that.
Lanny Davis, this is actually a bit of breaking news. It just came up this morning. You remember Tawana Brawley and that whole rape hoax case. She lost a defamation lawsuit back in 1991, but she's evaded paying this. And now they found her. She lives in Virginia, and the cost of this defamation suit that she lost is up to $430,000 now, and a Virginia county court in Surrey County is garnishing her wages. She's a nurse living a private life in Virginia. Now, you go way back with Al Sharpton, and he's a very respected voice in the Democratic Party. He's making millions from NBC and from his radio show and from his nonprofit organization there. Don't you think, Lanny Davis, that your friend Al Sharpton should just write this check and save Tawana Brawley?
Well, I think Al Sharpton was very embarrassed by that incident and that she lied to him. Now, he has to, I think, remind people that he was lied to and that he apologized. I believe he apologized. I may be wrong.
No, he hasn't. And actually, he doesn't. He never even said. He does not say that Tawana Brawley lied. He says he still supports Tawana Brawley.
Well, that would surprise me because she did lie, and I don't think he's personally responsible for her conduct. But if he's still defending what happened, and I think it's pretty proven that she lied, that would be a surprise to me.
All right, I'll email you the details on that.
Okay.
I don't. Also, Lanny, I want to praise you for your column you wrote this week about Whole Foods and about the book Conscious Capitalism from the CEO of Whole Foods. Why don't you? I would love for you to expand on that. John Mackey, I think, is a real forward thinker and is the kind of guy that could be a voice that both sides of the political equation could follow.
Well, this is a classic example where disagreement is not tolerated on my side of the aisle. We're liberals, and we're supposed to, by definition, be tolerant. John Mackey is an unusual man. He is very conservative. He's so libertarian that he actually crosses over and becomes liberal. So he's anti-government interference in the bedroom. He's pro-choice. He's pro-environment. I believe he thinks that people who are gay should be left alone and left to live their own lifestyle and marry if they wish. So he's a libertarian. But he runs his company, and Whole Foods is an example of conscious capitalism, which means the free marketplace can create jobs, and also people who are in management need to think as responsible citizens in their communities. Whole Foods gives 5 to 10% of its profits to nonprofit organizations. It pays for health insurance. People in the workplace are called team members, and they vote on policies and working conditions. And there's a limit on the amount of executives can be paid compared to the lowest paid worker. So here you have a very conservative man running a very progressive company, and because he disagrees with President Obama on health care, can you imagine that liberals who should be supporting the viewpoint that he expresses on being a libertarian, on choice in the environment and gay rights, actually called for a boycott because the senior executive of a company has some disagreement with President Obama on health care. So this is why I really wrote, not just because the idea of conscious capitalism and the free market and progressive thinking isn't incompatible, but we liberals have to be tolerant where sometimes people disagree with us, and we have to allow that.
There are some people who disagree with the nomination of Chuck Hagel to be the next Secretary of Defense. His confirmation hearings, I think, begin today. Do you think he gets confirmed ultimately?
Absolutely. I've disagreed with a few of the expressions that he's used, and I wrote about that. But the president won the election. The president gets to name his own cabinet with policies that many members of the Senate may disagree with. But it has to rise to a really, really high level to vote against the nominee for the president's own cabinet. Chuck Hagel.
He doesn't rise to the John Tower standard?
Yeah, there was a case of alcoholic and abusive females, and even then a lot of senators had a difficulty. Let's remember Chuck Hagel served in Vietnam, elected to the Senate, a bipartisan purple senator if there ever was one, even though he's a conservative from Nebraska. I disagree with some of his comments. I disagree with some of his emphasis on Israel, and he's allowed to disagree with me, for goodness sakes. But the most important thing, he's a patriot, he's a man of high integrity, and the president's entitled to the Secretary of Defense of his choosing.
Got to leave it right there. Lanny Davis,